a lot of the things that we have to be aware of as educators. So, are we providing adequate? No, I don't want to say adequate. Are we providing opportunities for students to explore tough questions and be able to think about their own integrity and what the implications are that their actions have impact on other people? This is just one aspect of AI, is one aspect of that whole social emotional progression. And so we want there to be integrity. We want them to be thinking about the impact of their actions. And so we try to have conversations. We think about what it is that impacts their ability to use a tool in a way that provides them the feedback they need to make the decision or develop whatever they're trying to create, but doesn't do it in a way that isn't appropriate.
So, welcome to the podcast, listeners. In a world where education is being rewritten by technology, the real question isn't how fast we innovate, but it is how deeply we care while we're doing it. Today, we're joined by a leader who's navigating that very intersection of future readiness and human centered schooling. Dr. James Everett, Superintendent of Meridian School District, has built a reputation for pushing innovation without losing sight of belonging, relationship, and purpose. From career pathways to technology integration, his leadership reflects one core belief, that is, school must prepare students for tomorrow without forgetting what makes us human today. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. James. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are really excited to do this podcast today. So, I'd love to know a little about your journey in education. So, what was it that first drew you into education? And all of these years later, do those motivations still hold true for you?
Thank you for the question. I think that the as I think back, I don't think leadership is a role. It's something that we evolve into and that we learn skills. And so when I was in high school, I got involved in leadership, and I had a teacher that provided me examples of how he could be himself and still guide us as learners. And it was really the first introduction to teaching as a place where the value of who you are is blended with the content and the opportunities that are in front of you. So he taught us skills and strategies that were transferable. And I think that was enlightening, and seeing how he approached the position as opposed to just teaching content, but also considering where we were as learners, and he shared who he was as an individual. I thought that was, as I reflect back, I don't know that I understood at the time, but as I reflect back, I think that he did a really nice job of impressing on me that you could impact other people. And so I looked at teaching after having him as a teacher as a potential career for me. And so I think that's how I got into leadership.
So I'm hearing that just him being himself and still being in a leadership position just showed you that it was possible to do that. And I think that is kind of what got you into. That is amazing. So I think you've already answered my next question, but I'll still go ahead and ask it again. Looking back, what do you think has shaped your leadership style the most? Was it experiences? Was it mentors? Or perhaps a challenge that you did not see coming at all?
Yeah, I think it's all of those. I think, there are aspects of leading that develop over time. I think you have experiences that you have. I think there are definitely mentors I can think of who really stood on principle and demonstrated that integrity is important, trust is important, humility is important. And so, those were things that were impressed upon me, and we're always evolving. So I think that they're a matter of several influences that help guide who you are, and we're always changing.
That is a really nice answer to my question. Moving on to the next question. How do you personally define student success today beyond test scores and graduation rates?
Good question. I think we're challenged in education. We have a lot of constraints and higher and higher and higher expectations. I think that graduation rates and diplomas and test scores are measures for a system, but they don't tell us the whole story, and we need to prepare our students for what happens after graduation. I'm in my fourth decade in education, and I was part of the system when we said career in college, and we didn't really pay attention much to the career part. And so that is a super viable aspect today that wasn't before. And so I think, to your question, we have an obligation to be preparing our students for life after high school. It should be a springboard to what they do in the next 10 years so that they are able to thrive. And we have a responsibility to that.
That is definitely really. So when you think about preparing students for the future, for the real life, what's more important? Do you think it's exposure to career or exposure to purpose? And if both of them together, how do you balance both of them?
I don't think you can separate them. I
Hmm.
think that they are embedded, and I think that we have an obligation to expose students so that they have the ability to see what is an interest to them. But I don't think we can rest on interests. We also need to be thinking about aptitudes. So I'll give you an example. During COVID, I got really interested in breaking apart my car and working on engines.
Okay.
I, I did something that I had never done before, but I couldn't make a living at that. I made a lot of mistakes. No one would wait for me to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I think we have to think about aptitudes, and we have to put students in a position to see what they're successful at, as well as expose them to careers in action. So then that alludes to progressive coursework that moves into preparatory and then builds on each other and culminates in apprenticeships and internships. And so that's the work that we're involved in trying to set that up now.
That is incredible. So, career and technical education is evolving rapidly. What does modern CTE look like under your leadership? And what was it compared to when you were in leadership position or before that as well?
So I thought about this question, and I appreciate you providing them early. I think the part of that talks about previous versions,
Hmm.
I don't think it's intentional, but it's misleading because CTE or career tech ed has always evolved. It has to be in line with industry standards. And as industries evolve, we have to be responsive. And so in Washington State, we do that with development of skill centers. And I think for other parts of the country, they're called shared time centers, where students in the high school level will spend half their day exploring a high wage, high demand trade or a job that would lead to a trade and a skill and certification and college credits and all those things. We want to create a pathway that positions them so that when they go through that, then they are able to then get into a career and move beyond that. So I think that thinking about CTE and the standards that we address with that is making sure that we're exposing our students in late elementary and middle school. We're having career fairs. We're bringing people in to talk about their careers. And then we're building coursework at our high school level that leaves exploratory and goes to preparatory. So if we have an allied health program at our skills center, then we want our students to be taking classes like anatomy and physiology so that they understand whether they like that, and they understand that, we have people who attend the skill center that say, hey, I want to work in a hospital, but then discover that they can't stand the sight of blood. Right. And so those are important experiences, and so important for them to understand when they're 17 or 18, as opposed to when they've done a degree and they're already in the field. Right. So I think that we have a responsibility to both expose and help our students understand what they're good at, and try to align it with interests and aptitudes so that they can see those careers in action and then envision themselves there. That builds resiliency and an ability to be able to move beyond when things get tough.
So I'm hearing a lot of aptitude testing, like aligning the child's interest with their aptitude. So how is it that you're doing that in your district? I would love to know that a little.
Well, it's work that we're currently working on. So we have in Washington State, we have something called a high school and beyond plan.
Okay.
And that is supposed to be a way to help students understand where their postgraduate desires are. But in reality, it's happened too late in their educational career, and the state is actually revamping that process. And so we're in the middle of revamping that process. And for us, what it looks like is engaging in activities that do have them doing some self-evaluation. And like I said earlier, exposing them. So getting them to be able to go visit different campuses, different work sites, having people who represent different careers in our community come to our schools and talk about what path that they went on and why, I think it's super hard to measure the value of talking to someone who's done it before. Um, but that's what we're engaged in, to try and make sure that our students have some sense of where they think they might want to go and what they're good at.
That is pretty incredible. Okay, so I want to move on to talking about AI a little bit now. So, how are
You
you
bet.
using AI in your district, not just as a tool, but also as a responsibility in today's fast-moving world?
It's a tough one because everyone who wants to use AI wants all the tools, and those who are skeptical of AI are fearful. And we also have legal implications. We have privacy we have to protect. And while we try to determine what our policy is and what our stance is, we have products that we use to help us do our work. They're already embedding AI into the tools that we don't have any say. So if you want to talk about a tool that helps us garner student feedback and impression, now those tools are coming with AI embedded in them, or even Office has AI embedded, right? So one of the things I do stand on is our state has done a really nice job developing guidance, our Office of Superintendent, and it's human inquiry, AI, and then human empowerment. So that's an HAH. So the idea is that it is a tool, and we look at technology to help enhance the work that we do. We are social beings, and we strive for connection. And so the idea of using a tool to help us be more effective is how I perceive AI. It's evolved, right? So we want to be able to think about what it is that we are putting in front of our teachers to help them be more effective. And we also want to think about what is it that we are asking our students to consider when they utilize a tool. Do they have an understanding of what the implications are for the things that they're asking the tool to generate? And why are they asking it? And then what are they doing with the information it gives back to them? So definitely, like the reference of the human interaction, I think, but I also think there's an aspect of using a tool for an appropriate purpose, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we're doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we were talking about the use of responsible AI and like how students are using it. So how do we ensure that, see, AI is a reality, students are going to use it, if not now, maybe later on in their careers. So how do we ensure that students are using AI responsibly?
I think it goes with a lot of the things that we have to be aware of as educators. So, are we providing adequate? No, I don't want to say adequate. Are we providing opportunities for students to explore tough questions and be able to think about their own integrity and what the implications are that their actions have impact on other people? This is just one aspect of AI, is one aspect of that whole social emotional progression. And so we want there to be integrity. We want them to be thinking about the impact of their actions. And so we try to have conversations. We think about what it is that impacts their ability to use a tool in a way that provides them the feedback they need to make the decision or develop whatever they're trying to create, but doesn't do it in a way that isn't appropriate.
That is a brilliant answer. So, we were just talking about how people perceive AI. So, what's your message to teachers who fear that AI might replace their value rather than amplifying it?
Great question. I think what I would say is that we have a responsibility to help our children understand the tools of their age. I would also ask what it would look like today if we stopped teaching math because calculators showed up in matchbooks. We don't stop teaching the content and the concepts because the technology has changed. If we're looking at the technology to be the end all, then we're already going down the wrong path. So it's a tool, and how do we use it to enhance what it is that we're trying to communicate or help students understand? And so I think that with the idea that we can't have students come out of our system that haven't been exposed and understand how that tool works.
Definitely. So how do we ensure that AI prepares students without disconnecting them from the real world relationships, empathy, and critical thinking?
I think that piece around social emotional skills, that idea that we're beings that are wired for connectivity, relationships are what makes it work in education, and so we need to ensure that we're embedding executive functioning skills in there. So students need the ability to um, garner an inhibition to an impulse, but they don't just automatically get that. We have to develop that, right? We have to help students self-regulate. And so whether it's because a student cut in line or because they got feedback through an AI response, they need to be able to know that they're in charge of what they do with that information. Can they dysregulate themselves, right? So I think executive functioning is a big part of being able to consider AI as a tool in a system that is so invested in relationships and interrelated connections.
Sense. But I want to know from you, since you're a superintendent and we know how hectic that can get. Have you been using AI personally? And if yes, what task do you make it do for yourself?
I have been using AI. I use it to help me think about things. So if I have a problem, I will put into the query, this is what I'm dealing with. I'd like you to take on a role of someone who has expertise of that particular issue, and I'm looking for ideas on how I can address this issue. So I use it really as a thought partner and to give me other aspects of how to think about
Yeah.
ways I can address it. I think I'm not sure I did, but I think in our system, we've put together a work group to try and look at how we can bring AI into the district with some guidelines. One of the things we won't do is we won't have a policy on AI alone.
Okay.
AI is an educational tool. It's a technology tool to enhance our work, just like we don't have a policy on web browsers or word processors. So we really want to think about how is it that we partner with that tool in our work.
Yeah,
So
yeah, makes a lot of sense. Again, like you already sort of answered this, but I will go ahead and ask this again.
okay,
Do you
okay.
have clear guideline or philosophy at your district? Like AI can automate tasks but never replace conversations. So if that is true, what does that sound like in your words for your district?
I think for our system, it is that human connection, and it is the relationship. But we do have that responsibility to make sure that our students are exposed and our staff are using tools and modeling how to use the tools appropriately. And so we'll land in a place that says this is a tool that we're going to exercise, but we're also going to recognize we have these other responsibilities around social emotional, and making sure that we're true to the content and integrity is still in place. And so all of those things are going to be important components of that. But I don't see any message coming from our system that says AI is going to take over.
Yeah.
I don't think it has the capacity to do what we do in education.
And I'm hearing a lot of social emotional development for students from your side. There's a lot of emphasis on human connection. So, how is it exactly that we can teach our students to be more emotionally intelligent beings? So, do you have any practices going on in your district like that, or how do you ensure that they are more social emotional? They're more educated in that aspect as well.
We're trying. So we definitely, there's a social emotional curriculum that we bring forward. We have advisory and homeroom classes where we teach lessons. I think our strategic plan, we target 5 commitments. Belonging, communication, support, wellness, and learning. And all of those work together. They guide our decisions. So when we talk about whether you do something and that impact is going to make someone feel like they're excluded, that's counter to that idea of belonging. Or how well does that support somebody? Or when we look at um, communication, one of the things we talk about is how are we bringing student voice into the conversation and ensuring that their needs are being heard. So there are aspects that I don't think I could point to one thing, but there are aspects that we are moving forward on all fronts that say we need to consider the whole child and the actions that we have and how they impact and hopefully elevate each student rather than exclude them.
That's a beautiful answer to my question. Thank you so much for that. So, those were all the questions that I had from my end. We have this little segment where we have the previous leader that we've done a podcast with ask a question for the next leader. So, the question that has come up for you, that is, if you could change one thing you did on your first day of leadership, what would that be?
I saw that question and I struggled for a little bit because I don't think that the role of a leader is the first time you exhibit leadership qualities. So I know as a teacher in a middle school, I took on the role of being building technology support because I had some background and we had a need and it was a small district. And so I did that work. And in that work, I also led staff trainings. And then later on, I developed curriculum. And so there's one aspect that I would say, I don't know, I think I'll answer your question, but there's one aspect that I say I believe in strongly is that you can lead from wherever you are. You don't have to have a specific title or role. And so that makes answering this question about your first day really hard because I think we evolve our leadership skills over time, right? And so I think I can definitely speak to things that I have understood about leadership since my first day. And that is that while I feel I have integrity and I want to approach things with humility, it took me a long time to recognize not everybody I interact with operates from that same frame, right? Trust is important and not everybody holds that. And so, that burned me a few times, but I got to where I understood, or that it's so much more effective to listen than to start talking. Right? That took me a little bit of time, but so I think the answer is that where we are today is the culmination of the experiences and the lessons we've learned over time, and that we may have some things we've developed when we first start a role, but we need to continue to be learning and understanding what's happening around us, and take from that.
I love that answer. But I just have a small follow up. When you
Okay.
were telling me that answer, you said that you could lead from anywhere and it does not have to be from like a position or like a label. So, how does one do that? How does one lead from any position, even if they're like not at a fancy job title?
Yeah. Um, Good follow up. I think I can give you examples of people who have seen a need and decided they wanted to do something about it, but they didn't have the formal leadership for it. And I think a way that I can explain, yes, I'm a superintendent, but I'm doing something in our district that is so far outside of my lane of a superintendent in order to meet a need that we have. And some people would say, no, that's your job, but I don't think it is. And we have what's considered a childcare desert in we are in, I don't know if anyone would know, but we are in unincorporated central Whatcom County in the far northwest corner of Washington State. So we do not have, we're a childcare desert. We do not have a lot of providers. And so when I started this position in 2018, we had one developmental preschool classroom serving 13 to 16 children. We now are serving 230 3, 4, and 5 year olds, and we are going to build an early learning center that has received funding from our senator, our U.S. senator, from our state legislature, from foundations around us, and we've come forward with an idea to say we need to address the needs of early childhood learning in Whatcom County because our children deserve a fresh start. And in fact, it makes great economic sense to invest early as opposed to put work in later. And we're going to build a building, but we're not going to run it. We're going to contract with someone who can provide longer hours because our employees are done at a certain time of day, and the need is all day for
Yeah.
families. We have women in our community who can't find work because they have to provide childcare. Uh, so I think lead from where you are is when there's a need or there's an opportunity to affect change.
Mhm.
Your title or the lack of a title shouldn't stop you from going after ways to address the need. And that can extend to any number of things. I have students who have interests in changing how things are happening. We now have, here's a good example. We have a student who just graduated, and she was part of our board. We have student representatives on our school board, and she's Hispanic. And we have a new organization in this country called Latinos in Action that prioritizes mentoring and leadership for students of color. And we now have a chapter in our school district, and we have a class in our high school, and it's created an identity and an opportunity for students to flourish and belong in a way that we've not had before. And a lot of that was generated by the interest of this student saying that we should bring that here. She didn't have any authority other than seeing a need, right? So that's a good example of that too.
That is brilliant. And I think it's only when, I mean, I know there are definitely other factors in this particular student's life, but I think seeing a leader or like seeing their superintendent take charge of so many things also must have had some impact on her. So that was amazing. We really
Yeah.
appreciate the time that you took out to do this today. And yeah, just thank you so much for doing this today. I think I learned a lot from you
Thank you.
personally. I think so will our listeners. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.